Okay, so in this video we're going to just quickly look at the most basic example, which is a card that contains links to some other UIs or other resources. As an example, Swagger UI and GraphQL UI and Schema for both of these does that. So if you look at here, you can click on this to see the generated GraphQL schema, or you can see the GraphQL UI. Similarly for OpenAPI. In the new one, I've already done the OpenAPI one. So now you can see it, but now you'll see it inside Dev UI, and then you can click download and download it. Now you'll also have a menu here so that you don't have to go back to click on the next one. You'll just be able to see the JSON format in this case, or the actual UI. So what we want to do is we want to convert the GraphQL one to also contain the two links. Okay. So in the old Dev UI, the way to do that was the way to make a card an active card is to create this embedded.html inside dev templates inside resources, right? And then this is not really an HTML file, it's a Qt template that will generate a snippet of an HTML that will be included, on the end result. In our case, we have the two links, and then you don't really have code inside here, which was quite annoying. But if you copy and paste, you can get the link to the config that is this, and similarly that. Right. So most of this has been copied and pasted. This can be any HTML, but it's mostly been kind of created just these links on the cards. So to do this in the new Dev UI, you don't need to do any HTML or Qt templating. So what we'll do is we'll create a new package under the deployment, and I'll just say .dev UI just to separate the two a bit. And then let's create a new processor. I'll call it GraphQL Dev UI processor. And that makes it nice and separate from the processor that does the actual extension work. And then obviously the first thing that we want to do is remove all this crap. And and then we want to create a card. So we'll say we want a card page build item. And we'll say, let's say create card. Right, and then the other important thing is that this is a build step, obviously, and it is a build step that should execute only if it's development. Right. And then we obviously need to create a card build item. Let me just zoom a bit. Okay, we need to create a card build item. And it's going to ask us for a name, which is the extension name. So if you go to your runtime module and you open this YAML file, you'll have a name for your extension there, which is typically the one that you'll use when it's asking for a name. We'll use it all over the place. Okay, so I have a card build item that I can return. So now we want to see what can we do on this card build item. So we can add a page, which is what we want to do. Now if you go back here, these links, even though this is a card, we call these links pages because it actually goes to a page. So in this case we have 3 pages added, and those 3 pages will have the links on the card, and will have the links in the submenu here. So back to the code, we'll say add page, and it needs a page, so we can create a page. Right. So to create a page, you'll basically just use the builder. So you'll say page dot and then you have a few builder options. So we'll go through them. The important ones are this one that we're going to use now is the external page builder, because we're just linking to some external page. And then the other important one will be the web component page builder, which is as soon as you build more complex pages, you'll start using that one. And then these are like in between ones if you want to display some data, but you don't want to write any code, any front-end code. So we'll start off with the first one. So we'll just copy from here. We want a GraphQL schema. So this is the link to the actual generated schema, right? And we'll probably want to add some more stuff to it. So you can say do not embed, which means it will go external, it will not embed it. So if we go back here, this is embedded inside Dev UI. If I say do not embed, it will just go straight there, right? So we don't want that. We'll embed it. It just creates a nicer experience. So the thing that's important obviously is the URL. Okay, so we need to get the URL. The URL here is from config, and you'll see it says config HTTP path. So this is some special config that knows how to make this the HTTP path, because what's important here is the non-application route. So we'll do it in code here. So the first thing we want is we want the config to get the URL, right? And yep. No, not that config. I think I need this config. Yeah, this is config. GraphQL config. And then to get the URL, it's pretty simple. So the schema actually doesn't use the non-application path. The schema is published under / always. So this should be enough to get me to the schema, and then I add the page. So this is the schema, the generated GraphQL schema. And now we also want to add the GraphQL UI. So we'll just copy from here. We want another page. Let's call this page the schema page. Schema page. And we'll call this the UI page. Okay, and then we want to add the UI page as well. Now the UI page is published under the non-application root path, so we're going to need to generate that URL. So we'll just pass in the non-application build item, non-application root path build item, and I'm just going to copy from here. We'll create the UI path like this, resolve path, and then we again get it from config. And now we'll say GraphQL UI, and the URL has now been generated like that. Now this should be enough already to show something on the screen. Okay, so I've rebuilded my extension and I've restarted my application, and my new card popped up. You'll see that it just uses some default icon because we haven't set the icon, but the two links are there, so I should be able to click here and I can see the schema embedded, or I can then obviously go out to it, and I can see the GraphQL UI embedded, or go out to it. Right, so that's easy enough. Let's see what else we can do. We can add an icon like we wanted. Now the icons we typically use are font awesome. So I'll show you there's some conversion that needs to happen between Font Awesome and how we use it here. If you go to Font Awesome as an example and you find your icon, before you find it, note that we only do free and we only support solid and regular. So in this case we said let's use this one, so you can copy that and let's paste it in. This is the one I want to use for the UI, so I'll say icon and okay, so now we want to write this out, so this is font dash awesome and then solid. Alright, and we're not passing in HTML, we just say that it's font awesome solid and then semicolon and take the font awesome away there. So that's kind of how you get to using it in a web component. So this should be enough. Let's see how that looks like. Okay, so I've restarted the server. I've rebuilt the extension, restarted the server, and you see the two icons change. You also notice I didn't refresh the browser. It just picked up that the server is restarted and it reloaded these icons. So now we have the the two icons there. So let's discuss the last few things that you can do on your card. So back to the code. We don't really need it here, but you can add a label. There's three types of labels. A static label, so that's just static, like some or other thing that you probably figured out on build time and you want to display there. It's typically used when you want to display, let's say in the arc1 display, how many beans has been removed, and then there's a number there. So it's just a label next to the link. You can do static labels, which is obviously the easiest, and then we'll discuss a bit later dynamic label and streaming label. So that's that one and that one. So that we'll discuss in a later video once we've kind of covered JSON RPC. But if we do static label on that one, let's see how that looks like.